Ink, ink. Good morning, everybody. It's time for protecting the nest. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning,
Morning.
John. Aloha.
Aloha.
Yes, aloha. That's a good topic.
Yeah, Hawaii seems to be a very, very interesting topic lately due to what happened on Maui.
What I see happening, I think in the big picture is that it'll be the excuse to be the climate change emergency.
The governor is already saying that they want to buy the land.
Yeah,
He's already saying it.
Well, there's people trying to buy it and the state's trying to buy it. So, and the state is Mr. Green New Deals. So I think his name is Green even.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't.
It's just literally
I noticed that. I was like, oh, how interesting. His name is Green. And I don't know, is that the person did you see that they had already planned like one of their smart cities? Like the 50
Yes, he was the person that was presenting at the WEF. Yeah. That's definitely, and they want to go, total digital, everything, all electric. But I wonder how much of those explosions had to do with batteries, giant batteries in cars, even, those are really super explosive if they get hot and they don't.
So I was listening to some people from Maui and they were explaining what happens early in the day. The storm, the very front of that storm came through. What happened was a couple of the poles, the electric poles fell. There was a small fire. They thought they contained it. So the firemen leave, it's contained, and then the winds start up again. And when the winds came through the next rotation, then it caught fire again. And that's when because the fire and the embers, it was just swooping it everywhere and they couldn't get on top of it. And people were running into the water. And so really the blame they're saying goes to the firemen who left the scene and who didn't consider that the wind would start back up. But then they were told, they had to leave to go back because there were other trees falling and other things they had to worry about. So just staying in that one spot. So it just got way out of control and they don't have enough services. It's a small island. They don't have a lot of equipment. But the problem was it ended up feeding into everyone's worry, which is now all our land is gone. And it's basically the people who lived there forever. And as this was happening, investors were calling them when they were still trying to figure out what was happening. But then what made it worse is not yesterday, but the night before, the governor gets on TV and says, we're going to offer to purchase the land from our citizens. And it was like every conspiracy theory that everybody was saying, because they were worried about the worst, comes true, even though it was the wind, it was that. And the governor makes it come true because he's an idiot. And then he reveals his cards, which, it was like, you can't really get mad at conspiracy theories. Maybe they thought there was beams from the sky, lasers and all this other stuff. But once they had video and people knew, no, this was a storm, this was an electrical fire, this was bad, and they didn't put it all the way out. But it's really ugly when investors are calling and then the governor says, we want to purchase your land. And it's like, okay, so maybe there weren't lasers, but my God, they still want the land for smart cities. So, they might as well have done lasers at this point.
And it was a sacred spot.
Yes, very.
And it was the ancient kingdom, the seat of the ancient kingdom. Although I think there is one on Hawaii too, but that was had that huge banyan tree that was hundreds and hundreds of years old. And yeah, it's horribly sad for the people that had held out. There were all the wealthy people behind them offering before this happened for many years.
That's why the conspiracy theories were happening. But that's why the locals, like this one guy, so he did they found that he did a TikTok before he did this. And he went through on his little rollerblades or whatever. And he was rolling through and he was describing the first fire. And then when this happened, he was like, oh my gosh, this is on purpose. But the reason why some people from Maui were saying their locals were very paranoid was because they've been pressured for the last 2 years. constantly. And they've been told climate change, climate change, climate change. At the same time, Green New Deal, and we're going to do. And so they've been forced, and they're like, wait a minute, you're offering us money. Investors are offering us money. You're acting like we live in shacks. You're acting like we're a pain in your butt. You're trying to sell us this idea that we don't want because it's not going to make our land sacred. And then this happens. So of course, all their locals are going to be coming up with all kinds of, theories, and rightly so, because they've been attacked. Like literally, at this point, like getting into the dynamics of, was it a laser or was it a lightning bolt? Like they got what they wanted.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, the
They
people
have
got,
methods.
They got
Yeah.
what they wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever, however it started, it's still
right.
the effect of the Green New Deal and the climate emergency and all that is the triggering mechanism, So
Yeah.
it
justifies all the conspiracy theorists.
yeah, it was predicted.
Yeah.
It was predicted for
And
sure.
we'll see how rapidly things progress
Mhm.
for those who want the 15-minute or the smart cities. Things are going to go just like popcorn, and that shows that they had lined everything up ahead of time.
And yeah, they probably tried to buy the people out. The people wouldn't get bought out.
Mhm.
And Oprah, she's been buying up for quite a while, and up till recently, a lot of land there. And it's funny that she's sort of been in the like highlighted hot seat, you know what I mean, as far as like certain circles talking about her like weird schools and her weird connections to like John of God and these like creeps and stuff. So I'm at who the flip knows. We do know that the acquisition thing is definitely part of it, like you said, regardless of how it happened, it's definitely strategic. And it's just disturbing. Like I heard none of the sirens went
Yeah.
off.
Oh, no,
there's
no, they
warning.
didn't go off. And
Mhm.
this is how it was justified. So I was in a space with people from Maui, like locals that were very frustrated. And they were saying, oh my God, they did this on purpose. And the firemen, there were firemen in there. And the people who like have worked in the rescue section. And when like a lot of us were like, what about the fact the sirens didn't go off? And everyone was being kind of like very pointed with their questions. They said, the sirens are actually for all of Hawaii, for that nuclear thing that they said that was going to happen a couple of years ago, and like when it's a huge thing. But for a smaller island like Maui, where it's concentrated, they have to turn it on at the big island, and it literally is for everybody. And so it got out of hand. Like within 15 minutes, a siren wouldn't help anything,
And the
because people were just
electricity
running
was
into the
out.
water.
It
Yeah.
still would have helped if the
Yes.
fire, as soon as they saw, had kicked up, if someone could have turned it on.
Yes.
And that's this one thing for everybody, one for all and all for one. If the sirens go for the entire state and they can't turn it on because of that, what's the point of having?
Did you hear Oprah got her butt handed to her because they said no media or press. So she marches down there with cameras and everything, and they made her leave, and she flips out, and they're like, you're stepping on dead people, and we're trying to get their family to know who's here, because these Hawaiians, they have a special rite of passage. Like they have a certain burial ceremony, and we only have a certain amount of time to follow their traditions, and you're stepping all over their family members. Could you move? This is not about you. And it was really ugly, because she does, on one hand, doesn't want people to think that it's just a bunch of elitists who wanted this, the poor section taken out. So she wants to defend herself. But in the other token, because she couldn't be there, reporting from it and walking around, then of course she's like, oh, they want to hide stuff from us. And it's like, no, they don't want you stepping on the dead bodies. Like they're literally with family trying to locate and clothing, and like they got into details on the Twitter space, and it was like one of the people in there started crying, and it just said how they found out that their family member who died was discovered, and then they knew because of the clothing and where they would have been located when the fire took place. So, and they were having a hard time and a struggle, and they actually had the ceremony closed out with a prayer, which was really great. So they did a traditional Hawaiian prayer, after the space, it got heated, and everyone was, because nobody believed each other, and the people who work and do that for a living in Hawaii, like they were not getting it easy. There were no easy questions, and people were just like, I don't believe you. What about this? What are you going to do about this? And it was great because they got to really understand why people feel the way they do, because people were able to share. I've been asked multiple times for my property. They're only offering me this much, and they think that I'll just give up one day because our services haven't been great. And so they got to really release why they're so angry. And it was great because I thought it was just going to be namby-pamby. I thought it was just going to be, a shirk to authority and say yes sir, no sir, and believe everything they're told. But they were not going to listen. That they wanted to be heard, and it was really great because the people who work in Maui were very much so open to listening and did not interrupt, and were talked down to multiple times, which that comes with the territory.
Well, it did sort of bring back Katrina, memories of how FEMA didn't show up. The people were just left there. They had to figure things out. And then when the money all came in for rebuilding, the people got screwed, so it's a real similar story. I think George calls it pennies for the dollar, pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it is really sad, and it does seem to be something. And then Biden, he put the money,
No comment.
half
No
of the
comment.
money,
700
twice the money to go to,
wasn't $730
$700, a one-time.
yeah, $700. And then he
per
said
person.
12 billion, but then only if he could give twice that to the Ukraine. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And then
no
he
comment
did,
no comment
he did tweet something which I thought was weird. I don't know if it's a tweet that he does, but something about there being laser focused. Blah blah blah.
Right.
Oh,
blah.
I know. But
That's
did you
like,
know
what?
his press secretary, she got caught the other day because she tweeted for him, but she accidentally tweeted for him on her account. And so
Okay.
she spoke like she was Biden, and she accidentally posted on her account, and people got a screen grab, and then she deleted it. And then she said she didn't, but it was on there. And then she had to say she did, and it was an accident, but they didn't want anybody to know that it wasn't him. And so I guess she gets the instructions to do it, and she opened the wrong account to post it. So that means he doesn't even know what goes on his
Yeah, so
account.
that's
So
probably
somebody
right.
was able to put laser, and he
Yeah,
probably didn't.
that's right. That's right.
I wonder. Yeah.
Chris-
Could be Obama's people setting him up too, to make him look
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Mhm.
Oh, he already does.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that comes naturally. But I mean, if you're really wanting to show ineptness, you're going to put a couple of things in tweets to just, make people infuriate them. And it's not
Mhm.
even from him. It's from somebody doing it on purpose
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
set a tone. Yeah.
Yeah, they sure are good at infuriating people.
Oh yeah. And they love it. And it's sad because then they complain and whine like babies when it comes back on them. And they're like, oh, why is everyone acting like this? Because you stirred the
Well,
nest.
I think that's kind of what we're here to help figure out is, how do we protect our nest, meaning the humanity that we are in our families, in our communities, in the whole world. That's what's getting lost in all this obfuscation here going on. And I had an example of that locally that happened to me this week, where I went to the local grocery store and I opened my door to get out of the car in the parking lot. And I looked at the car next to me, the door was open and there were two bodies in the car and a dog just sprawled out. And this isn't a terribly uncommon thing to see, sadly, people shooting up, and that's kind of what I thought it was. But anyway, I did a quick shop and I was in line, and as soon as the lady had finished, I talked to the checker and said, I'd like to let you know that the car next to me in the parking lot has two bodies falling out of the doors, and I'm not I hope they're alive, but I'm not sure. And I just wanted you to know. And so she told somebody, but what happened is the people on either side of me, which were kind of older women, they said, thank you for doing that. Thank you for speaking up. And I've read some of these plans, sixth generation. Part of it is so you do walk over the dead bodies, that people get used to that, and that's part of what makes us not want to be here anymore, I think. So however we can, in every little way, we need to just be sure to speak up, and say, let's not walk over the dead bodies. Let's do the right thing, and when I went down there, the lady was there and she was very kind and said, people are concerned, you guys really can't be here. And they weren't dead, and which wasn't, yes, but still it's just a horrible thing to have to see, and for little kids to have to see. Just, it looks like they are. It's awful. So anyway, I think they handled it with grace, and the people got noticed. They didn't want to be noticed either. They wanted just to be able to be left alone and to be able to shoot up, but they got noticed. And I think that's important as well, to really say, you're people, act like people. We're gonna act like people.
Imagine, and I think this is where the disconnect comes. People every day wake up and they know in their heart that our government is allowing drugs that are killer, that you can never get off of, leak like a sieve through our borders on purpose. At the same time,
and make money from it.
Yeah, and at the same time, allow cartels to run roughshod, and at the same time, allow for the protocols in the hospitals to be dangerous, allow for the experimentation on people, allow for mutilating children's bodies because of a philosophy before they're old enough to make a decision, and all of this going on while they just sit there and go, but isn't that what you guys want? Like little sarcastic jerks, rather than actually doing their job. Right. It's like saying, well, you guys wanted a party. Here's your, well, I didn't vote for that party. And I don't know very many people that did. So who are you listening to that you decided was millions of people that I've never really met and no one ever sees, that made you make the decision not to do your job? And why are you blaming the likes of all of us, saying this is what we asked for? None of us asked for any of this. So that's gaslighting at its height. And when you wake up and you know that there's a bunch of people who are believing what they're told, and in doing so, it will get them killed. And people are standing by that are paid to protect you. And it just, imagine what it does to a psyche when people know deep down in their spirit, they know in their soul, they know at their core, this is not right. They know that this is being allowed to happen. And it's the only way to not face it is to not think about it, but it still weighs heavy. So how do you do that when you've seen more than some people? You're going to drink. You're going to get addicted to a drug. You're going to just become mean. You're going to do something to get your mind off of it, whether it's eat too much, exercise too much, gossip too much, stir trouble, get violent. There's got to be a release.
Or just pop off.
Yeah, it's got to be a release.
With what we're seeing with people that have been friends for years, that something sticks in your craw wrong and it just gets out of hand. And it is a sad thing, however it happens.
Well, the daughter of a friend of mine is a social worker, and she said that the child abuse rates are off the chart. And that was even before COVID. But after COVID hit, it just got worse and worse and worse. And I think that, when we talk about protecting the nest, that's the first thing that we have to really think hard about. How do we change people's attitudes towards the general stress level, that they don't bring it home and they don't use it against their kids?
I will say with the child abuse thing, they've now put into law that if your child comes to you at like 8, 9, or 10 and says, I'm a boy or I'm a girl, and you don't affirm it, or if kids say, this is my pronoun, or I want the teacher to call me a different sex, you don't affirm it. There are some areas that will say that that's abuse, and you will automatically have to go to that kid's counselor at school And that counselor will say, this is not in the best interest of the child. And there will be a note taken about the family, and they will be offered counseling, because it's not because the kid is the bad person or the school who allowed for this idealism to come in and, make them think that they can just choose. Like, yeah, just cut this off, give me some medicine, and I could be someone else. But they make the parent who's trying to get the kid to think, to love who they are, to maybe not get caught up in like what's cool right now or what their friends are saying or what they're seeing in movies, but to really, deal with it in the family. And then you've got entities coming in, and like in California, if your child decides they want to take hormones, I think it's at 14, and the parent says no, you can get in trouble, and the school doesn't even have to tell you.
Child
So-
Protective Services is going to come in at that point.
Yeah.
There are
And that's the
horrible
problem
stories.
about the abuse, is like, that's what we need to do. We need to define when it's actual abuse and when it's them using the word abuse, because they did that to Nancy
Yeah,
Schaefer here in
I think we need
Georgia.
to take back our language. Our
Yes.
language has been twisted to be, in so many instances, where
Absolutely.
up is down, and that's exactly what Huxley and Orwell warned us about. That's what would happen, and that is exactly what's happening. But the good news is, I think more and more people are starting to notice that.
Yes. And Nancy Schaefer, they said it was a double suicide. It wasn't, but she was complaining about the family courts, because states get paid money whenever they take a child away, and they get money and then they give it to the foster parent. And a lot of the foster parents here, not all of them, because there's some good ones, but you get money. So Chase and I can make a lot of money if we just started fostering children. So if we knew that, we want to take advantage of it. That's why a lot of foster kids get abused. Like, they don't get paid attention to, because it's the money that
I think there's
parent
also
gets in.
alcohol is
Yeah.
And when people are stressed, and everybody is stressed, and alcohol does something. I know you're aware of it. I'm aware of it. It can just change personalities, and the violence in language, in actions, comes out, the worst aspects.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's her.
It's so true. And yeah, exactly. They call it protective services. That's the thing. Like, most people would think like, yeah, they're protective services, but it's like, that's just a play on words to cover what their whole entire angle is. Yes, there's good workers that think they're doing a good job, and they're not the, main vein of the system, so it's like,
Well, there are good people and there are horrible
Yes.
people,
Yes, and
everywhere.
people in
Both
a
as
horrible
parents,
system. The
foster
system is
parents.
not good, no matter
Yeah.
how many good people they plug in there.
Mhm.
Right. Where the problem came in here was like they wouldn't give the child to the grandparents. They wouldn't give the child to other family members. They would just say no, because it had to deal with the mom or the dad. And no matter how much the family fought, they would put them in foster care. And a lot of times they would get lost in foster care, or they would keep the other family in court for so long. The child was almost of age of making their own decision. And it was like they robbed the child of being with family by having them with strangers. And these are the things that were in Nancy Schaefer's book she was going to release, and her little movie. And then she was off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Let's not forget, because these people are, I always say, I think that like these people that have a passion as earthlings, just imagine their passion as angels, so that's who we have backing us.
Very
Her and
true.
many
Very
people.
true.
And it's
Yeah.
like the thing to connect, the other thing that you guys were just saying, to kind of link it together, is that the whole idea of battering people down to the point where they just accept that like things are bad, there's nothing you can do. It's kind of like a despondentness, and we can see that that's really what they're going for, because, and it's not even just a despondentness, sometimes it's just a general acceptance, when it comes to like that thing about the people in the schools or whatever. It's like, people need to be logical, they need to communicate and come together and say, what the heck is this crap? It's like,
They get
we're not,
numb.
yeah, it's like we're on to what's going on, and now we're gonna like set up networks where we share notes, like, this is what I heard was going on today, you know what I mean? Because it's like, it has to be a more like engineering type thing. Like if they build this, okay, then we're gonna figure it out like this. You know what I mean? Like it's a challenge of life.
Well, what I found is interesting is like for me, if you're really wanting to help our children, the last thing you want to talk about is sexuality. The first thing is how to farm, how to keep your structure, your mycelium structure in the soil without doing deep trenching and like just doing surface turnover with a fork. And then you're keeping the nutrients in your soil. There's so many things that our children don't know because the parents don't know it, that they could be actually helping. They could even help teach them how to use a checkbook, for Pete's sake, but they're not. They're teaching about things that at their age is irrelevant because they haven't even gone through puberty. And it's like, oh, the priorities here, like all the things with their little minds that you can actually teach, and the things they could create if they knew like how to build an earth house, or what would you do with these materials, and just watch their little brains go. No, are they concentrating on that? No, that tells me everything I need to know. And it should tell everybody else what they need to know. Like there's so many things we should all be passionate about that is absolutely beautiful, that our children would like soar to heights of just pure genius. But those doors are shut, and it's all about carnality. It's all about the base, like most animalistic part of ourselves, rather than, you know, the most creative and more beautiful thing that we should be harnessing and bringing out of our children. And that's like, these are missed opportunities. And that's what makes me so mad, because people are like, no, but we've got to do this for children. I'm like, priority wise, no. What we need to do is teach them self-survival, like things that, you know, help them take care of themselves, understanding nutrients, understanding their body, like not sexually that side, but like how does calcium and iron conflict? Like why? Like there's so many things, like when to take a proper vitamin, why you get vitamin D. Like these are things that children, they have no idea. Like
well, most adults don't either.
Right. But see, that's the perfect. But see, if you're going to say, well, you know what, the adults have, that's the reason why we have to teach these kids things, because their parents weren't taught. Well, wait a minute. We weren't taught how to do electroculture farming. We weren't taught how to ground ourselves on the ground to get the natural energy of the earth. We weren't taught a lot of things. So if you're actually the hippy dippy people who want to, you know, free everyone and make them feel good, like, wouldn't it be about gardening? Wouldn't it be about self-sustaining instead of this other base carnal, you know, over sexualizing of the children? Like, where are your priorities? And I think that's what it's not the idea that they want to talk about things. It's the way that becomes the only thing, as if that's all our children are going to be, is a sex object or something that has to do with not procreating because there's too many people, or, you know, being a different looking person with a different name, rather than what are you going to do with your life? I mean, not like who are you going to sleep with, but literally what are you going to add? Like what creative splash are you going to make? And they're not concentrating on that. And that's what infuriates me, because somebody would come up against me and say, you don't care about the children. I'm like, no. If you want to talk to children about this, wait till they're 16, 17, 18. If this is something you're passionate about, you should be teaching about. I can come up with like 980 things before we even get to that. Why aren't you? And why are you so upset and forgetting about all of this? Because this shows you don't care about the nurturing of a child. You care about some weird agenda that's not making any sense and makes you look like a predator.
Yeah, it's a delusion. It's a delusion. And like, you know, just like any healthy being, if you incorporate those things you're talking about with like interest and getting to know yourself and getting to learn about your surroundings and all this stuff, then it's like you have self-respect.
Children will love themselves.
Yeah, they have self-respect. And then sexuality is one of, if you have a healthy natural environment of protection and health, then it's one of the most natural things. Like you don't need to do much, you know, kind of like
it just happens. It just happens.
It's not
one day you want to look cute because you look over and you find someone else cute. And nobody made that happen. It just happened. But nobody's there. It just doesn't happen to know how to till soil to make sure your plants grow at the optimum level. That's something you have to be taught.
Yeah.
Like they're wanting to teach stuff that already comes natural and not the things that they should be teaching.
And they're saying that if they don't teach that, then they're gonna turn into a scumbag.
Yeah. Well, right now they could be someone who doesn't know how to change their own tire, manage their own checkbook, know how to write a resume, know how to go after a good degree, doesn't know how to be self-sustaining, has no idea about their body when it comes to keeping it alive with nutrients, but knows a lot about tattoos, hair dye, and sexuality. Like, come on, people.
Yeah.
Like, you could tell me you're a hippie all day, but I don't believe you because you're not
Yeah.
doing anything that makes me love hippies. Like, hippies aren't known because of the color they colored their hair and who they have sex with. That's just, that's an afterthought. They're known by like their philosophy, the things that they do, their love of the earth, the way they utilize the earth in order to self-sustain, the way they don't want to just buy and purchase every little trinket known to mankind because they want to recycle and reuse and actually create things out of trash to make it beautiful.
They like doing things themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but where is that?
Buying things.
Yeah. And I don't want to hear these people tell me that they're some groovy hippie or they're a part of the earth. No, you're not. No, you're a rogue creature. Like, I know hippies. Like, my mom and dad hung out with them. My mom was half hippie. My dad liked her because she was half hippie, and a lot of their friends were. And so, I know what groovy looks like.
That's what people were like in those days.
Yeah, I know what groovy looks like. Yeah. And I'm not seeing these people claiming that they're doing it they're not groovy. They're weird. I know what groovy is. Like, I know when it's like, really, I want to care for the earth, and when it's a bunch of hooey. And then right now they're a bunch of hooey people.
Yeah. Well, I told you guys before when we were around with John one time, I feel like there was something, like, my mom was born in the 50s. And I just feel like there was something when she was little that they put out there that was like, now this is going to sound kind of weird, and I know I said it before, but like, she's a wonderful person. So she's a good example just of someone who, like, somehow overlooks a certain level of perversion. And I'm not talking about her, I'm talking about generationally. Like, I feel like that's why I asked Carol, you and John before, like,
yeah, I was born in the early 50s, and I think,
so
there was this wholesomeness that we grew up as kids with, like Ozzie and Harriet and Leave It to Beaver and all that stuff. And that was something everybody got. It was like there was one program and we all got it, that sort of wholesomeness, which was a little bit Stepford Wives, maybe, if you step back and look at it. But still, we all got this mindset. And then when things started happening, the murders of our president and our heroes and the Vietnam War, we just, our hearts were broken, and we had to do something about it.
The introduction of acid.
Things.
Yeah, the introduction of LSD, the introduction of these things that changed the formation of how people thought. And they took what was natural, which would be considered like mushrooms or marijuana, and then they added synthetics. And those things twisted with everything else, and alcohol, heavy laden alcohol, which they said was legal. And then they allowed, experimentation on so many people. Yeah.
The meth was left over.
Was it called crystal then? It was called crystal or something?
Less. I remember it was called speed back, like when I was in high school. And it was only like 2 kids in the whole school were what we would call speed freaks. It wasn't. Now it's like, pervasive.
Now they have pharmaceuticals that do the same thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And they give them to kids that are having trouble. So it's ultimately long term, it's not going to help anything. It might short term for a little bit, get them to think differently, but to keep kids on that stuff, then all they want is cocaine. It's horrible. From Ritalin, go straight to cocaine. It's really a bad plan.
Especially when they get off on their own and they don't have their own insurance. And then they go to a party or hang out and they find, if I have caffeine, like a Red Bull, and then I do this, and then I do this, that takes them right back to the feeling like go, zoom, zoom, zoom. And when they're not that, they just want to sleep and veg out, and they have so they never learn to manage how they naturally are. And
to listen to who they were.
Yeah,
that's one of the things that part of the hippies, learned how to meditate early on. They learned that, and it was like cool. So people learned how to find that space within themselves and listen to it and you could hear things, once you got in that habit, you could hear what you're supposed to be doing.
You could hear your soul speak to you.
Mhm.
And I think everything's so loud right now. I think a lot of people don't know who they are and they're waiting for someone else to tell them, when only you can actually find who you are and then be that, because that's what you're supposed to be. And I think a lot of people were never taught, before you follow somebody else's lead. If like you go into this is how I kind of chalk it up. You are hanging out with your girlfriends, you go over to your girlfriend's new apartment and she painted her kitchen a mint green with stainless steel and black. So you're like, oh, that's like an old diner. And then you go to pick out paint and you're like, that's what I like. But is it? Or
Mhm.
did you just see it and now you like it? Are you sure that's you? And why don't you go over there a couple more times and see if you could deal with that? But people are just like, I don't have an idea. I'm just going to emulate and then it'll feel good about me. But you're not finding you ever. And so you're never satisfied. There's never like if you do a color that, this is you. And this is like, because you know who you are and you're confident in it, you don't want anything else because you got exactly what you wanted by laying it out. But if you copied and emulated what you saw somebody else do, you're still lacking what you really want and need on the inside. So I'm trying to teach my kids, never copy, see something they did and be like, that's so cool. And then be like, what would I do? And like, don't even, if it's similar to them, fine, but don't emulate it. Find you, because you will be a different type of spectacular. And if you try to be their spectacular, you'll always feel less than because they were the first spectacular and then you copied it. And, that's a hard thing when in today's society, you're taught to regurgitate. And like in school, they're just taught to memorize, pass the test, throw it away, memorize this next thing, pass the test, throw it away, rather than, really deeply know the subjects and
Well,
really
that's
know
what
a
I'm
lot
saying,
about them.
this time we're in where it feels so horrible on many, many levels, but I can still see a path to where if it cracks open and we can really learn what has actually happened and make a difference in the way we want to, then it's all this opportunity is there to really reimagine things and have it be more self-organizing, we don't want this total top-down everything. There is a lot of excitement there, but in the meantime, we still have to get through the addictions, all these emergencies with horrible surveillance on top of everything.
I think it's very important to make sure that every kid, especially teenagers, find quiet time, 45 minutes at least every morning and every afternoon, because by not allowing them, everywhere they go, there's noise, lots of noise. If you can't find quiet time, if you can't find time to meditate, you don't discover who you are, and you wind up being one of 6 or 8 preconditioned, pre-molded groups. You have to belong to the group, one group or the other group. You have to choose one of these preordained groups.
And that's where the earphones and all the plugins are taking us away from ourselves. So
yeah, what I've noticed, like, I think it is so hard so with a husband and 2 little boys in the house, and for everyone to get quiet time, the best way is like, okay, everybody grab a book. But then because no one's used to quiet, then you start to actually hear the refrigerator hum and you hear, that the cat jumped on the dryer. And then you hear outside the tree that's it's the Italian cypress bumping into the side of your cornice board on the side of your room. And then your mind races. Then you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot the kids messed up the bathroom. I got to get up. And then you go in and go, hey, boys, I told you to pick up your clothes in the bathroom. And now it's not quiet time anymore. And I find that it's like, holy cow, like there is no absolute quiet. And that's why we like camping. Because you go and then when it's dark, like you only hear the symphony of the animals, like those sounds, and you're not busy with like the things that are going to make you jump up and run and like like, let me turn this off, or the fan's on downstairs. No, it's like you can't control turning anything on or off. It just is. And then you just fall into, because you have no control. So you're not trying to, your mind isn't spinning. You just relax into that sound because
Well,
you
I
have
think
zero
that
control over it.
You might consider, Amber, that when you're listening to the cat jump on the dryer and all that, that is your mind and your awareness expanding right there, and just let that happen, let it go and take it out further and further. That's
I'm going
exactly.
to need your help, Carol, because you
Yeah.
don't want to let it go where it goes. Like,
Well,
it literally becomes OCD, and I end up needing to clean out my drawers, my closet. And I wonder if that sticky goo that was in the bottom of the fridge is still there, and that I need to buy wet wipes tomorrow. And then I make a grocery list, and then I remember I need to pay a bill, and I'm like,
well, I guess the first time I remember, I was a young teenager, and the first time I just sat quietly and did that, kind of under instruction. I was learning how to do this, but it was in a basement in a housing thing, but there was trees outside, and my mind I could like hear the birds, and I could imagine the trees and the leaves, and it did that exactly. It pulled me out into nature, which was out there. And it was a wonderful, wonderful feeling to just let that happen and just let it get bigger, get your awareness bigger and bigger and bigger, and just take it in. It was fabulous. So that, but it wasn't all the details. It was details though, but it was the details of little animals and the light and seeing all that, so.
I'll tell you, and this is going to sound like really crazy, but when I'm out in nature and I'm listening, I start to hear like the animal movement, and I hear them communicate. And I can actually, it's kind of like I'm on the same level as they are, and I understand them a lot more. And then I forget just about being human, and I'm totally engrossed in that. But anything inside around people, not at all. It's literally, it's all the stuff, because I care about this one, and I got to remember to do this one, and tomorrow I'm going to make cookies for them, and it's all that mess. But when I'm in not my element, it's their element. I totally like go right down in the sleeping bag, and then my ears are like dee, 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 little radars, and then I'm like feeling, and it's all about them, and any of my life goes away. It's so weird.
Say that, because my daughter went to environmental school, and I remember we went out into the woods, and we all camped with all these middle schoolers. But we learned, one of the things that one of the teachers taught us was about tracking and how you open up your ears.
That happens to me.
And when that happens, you normally use like 10% of your brain, but when they put people with all the electrodes who are in that mode, they're using 90% of their brain. You use so much more. You're so much more engaged by doing that opening of your ears and just hearing.
Yes, we went to Cumberland Island 2 weekends ago, and we were only there for a couple of days. But let me tell you, when we sat there, I could tell which direction the wild horses were going. I knew if it was an armadillo with a baby, and without seeing them, I knew that the mom was telling the baby, don't go over there. There was movement on the tent. Like I could tell when there was a predatory bird that swooped down. I could tell when it missed something. I could tell like when there was a deer like over in the side spying on me as I walked by. And then I could tell when another deer further back said, oh, it's okay. And the deer walked into the path where I was and just stood there, and I stood there. And then I slowly walked by, and it walked off, and then looked back at that deer, and that deer was like, I told you. So it's a very weird, I get like, I can
that's
actually,
super cool. And I think it means you're a tracker, and we all are, maybe.
Yeah, but not in my environment. Like around people,
only in the forest.
Yeah, only in the forest. Around like nature, trees, animals, things I have zero control over. Like I just have to be like plopped there.
Yeah,
Man, it's like whoosh, and I just like I like integrate into it. But here I'm like, oh, I need to do, and
well, you're still paying attention. You just don't need to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yes, I have
Yeah.
no responsibility except to listen.
Cumberland Island sounds really amazing with animals, and it really made me
Oh, yeah.
think, just to like, tie a loop in. I think I told you this before, but when we went to Maui, which was in 2006, it was so lacking in animal life that it was like eerie.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, we have like two types of birds. There were more, but they like
Yeah.
brought in this animal that was nocturnal to kill this other one, and it didn't work, and blah, blah, blah. But just because the island was so young or whatever, like most of the wildlife is actually in the water. And when you're used to like, if you have a gorgeous forest, I mean, even if you're in the city, there's all kind of birds talking to you. So it was just, I took note of how odd that was.
Was it just like insects that you could hear, or were there not many insects?
You could hear stuff. It was definitely like had life and did have insects, but it just wasn't like the amount of like species that you would expect in such like
Like the Galapagos.
yeah,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
you'd be
Right.
like, what?
Yeah,
You'd be
there's
like,
so few birds. Yeah, I was in Maui in well, it must have been like 1988 or something, or 89. It was before we had kids. And what was really struck me looking at the photos of Lahaina is that the place we stayed is that hotel that was left standing. It was in the exact same place. You see all this flattened, and then there's this just a hotel, and it was right exactly in the map of where I remember it being in
wow.
my head. So it's shocking, but there's a weird synchronicity,
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah.
why
I wonder
was
if that's made out of very really strong material and rock,
It-
whereas
it
the others
was,
made out
it
of
was-
asbestos and like mud.
it was made out of I think cement, like blocks, as
Okay.
I recall, but that might have been another one on a different
I think
island.
maybe it was because I said, what is that? Building steel? And Dave said cement.
Yeah, a lot of those, those blocks that you just stick together and then they're hollow in the middle.
Cinder
That's what
blocks.
a lot of
Yeah, the
buildings
cinder
are made.
blocks.
Yeah, and it doesn't do too well in a moist environment. And Hawaii, depending what side of the island you're on, can be pretty moist.
Right.
But it is beautiful, and just landing and the fragrance. To me, I missed the birds. Yeah, where are they? But the fragrance was there,
Yeah.
and that's something that you just don't get other places. It is.
Oh, yeah.
Was it
Really
just the abundance of flowers?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Oh, nice.
I
Yeah,
ate
that's
a
nice.
mango and I just ate the whole peel. I couldn't even stop myself from
Yeah.
just like eating the whole thing.
It's like perfume. Yeah, mangoes are like,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
So- and then when you get like you go to a little cart or something, or like to the fish house, and they're like, I'll get a fish sandwich, and then they're like, what kind of fish? And you're like, really?
It's
No
not
place
just
I've ever
frozen
been had
freezer.
that kind of like sort of range of fish. So that was quite delicious. But yeah, definitely praying for them because and did you guys see that the chief of police, who's like real creepy looking?
Yeah, he was the one who served in Las Vegas during
Las
that
Vegas.
shooting.
And his face, I'm like, ugh. Like as soon as they flashed his face before they even said who he was, I was like, ooh, not a good guy.
Yeah, things like that are odd coinkydinks. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
The people in Maui said that he ended up there. He was dysfunctional in his job in Las Vegas, and that he was looking to leave because a lot of people in Las Vegas didn't like him, and so they were looking to transfer him. And Maui was one of those who they had no idea how many people didn't like him in Las Vegas. So they're like, okay, great. And then they haven't liked him since he's gotten there. But the people like the firemen and stuff that were on that space, they said he's just not really good at his job. And we've known that since the beginning. Like he's not good with talking. He's not good with communicating. He wasn't good in Las Vegas. Like I have no idea why they transferred him here.
Well, I know we had some weird police chiefs, and then they got transferred to weird places where horrible things happened. you gotta wonder this.
Do they just pick dysfunction? Like this person won't pay attention. They'll do whatever comes across an email. They won't critically think, and this will be easy.
Yeah.
Are they just
And then
somebody
maybe
who just
people have
rides out their
I don't
job?
know.
Order
Yeah.
followers. That's what they want in a police
Yeah.
chief, is order follower.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's what they were alluding to. They're saying, well, he knows how to read an email, and he knows how to answer a phone and show up and like say what he's supposed to. But as far as like knowing how to communicate with people, knowing what to do, which he obviously did in Las Vegas with how he communicated with people, where people had more questions after he talked, not less, more. And that he didn't see that was a problem. He thought that the people were a problem. Like that, how come I didn't answer your questions? Like he's kind of offended, but he's just not good at it, but he's convinced he is, kind of thing. And since he does what he's told, so it's like this dysfunctional functionality, because it's functional for the people who need him to do that job. And it's a political job where you just
Right.
do what you're told by your mayor,
Yeah.
by your
Well,
governor.
it's the attitude, I'm going to give you the answers and you're not allowed to ask the questions. That's what
Yeah.
we've been seeing. for
They said he
years
gets
now.
offended.
Yeah. Here's all you need to know. And, just shut up.
Yeah. It was confusing to him because he's like, I don't understand their problem. Like
Yeah.
I answered their questions, but they're obviously asking questions because he didn't in a way that made them feel better. But I think we've had police chiefs like that before where they moved, and it was because they would actually set the tone and they would say something they shouldn't, and then it would be revisited, and then they would say they didn't say it, and then it would be like, yes, you did. And then they'd have to, talk about how they misspoke. And it was like, oh, good Lord. But then they would get annoyed with everybody because people should have just known they misspoke when they said they didn't think they said that. And it's like, no, you have to be a good communicator. Like, no, people have more questions now.
They probably have people that they know are like that they like, that are pawns, and then they like plug them into certain areas, and then they know, oh, such and such will just be a dumbass out there.
Well, they won't
Well, like
dig in.
Michelle Walensky, you just say safe and effective, that's the answer to everything. And
well, imagine this, like he's standing there, and instead of him telling the people, we're going to protect you in a way where if there's investors coming after you, come to us. And if our state officials start to push for an overreach, we're here to defend you guys. And we're going to make sure that just because you can't walk through right now while we're trying to figure out the body count and who's laying where so that we can do right by these families, but just know that you're not alone and we're going to protect you. And here's our phone numbers and here's this, because we do suspect people are going to jump on this. They're going to want the investment, and it's a really sad time, and we would hope people wouldn't do that. And if there's a way that we can give them a fine for doing so, please turn in anybody who's overstepping grounds and pressuring you or putting you in a vulnerable state. Like saying that then makes people know that you're like communicating it. But it's like, why would they hire somebody who's going to stop them? Like who's going to stop the governor from saying the federal government here will buy your properties, people? Like they don't want a guy thinking like that. They don't want a police chief telling the people, I'll make sure nobody offers you money for your land, especially when the governor's going to want it. So of course they don't want somebody to make sure he's crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's for the citizenry.
That's right. That would be too revealing on them.
Yeah, because they would point to them, because you'd have a police chief standing in your way saying, wait a minute, we haven't even found all the bodies. This is wrong. And he would have already announced it at a press conference where the governor wouldn't feel comfortable to even offer it.
Right.
And they can't have that, because then they can't have their smart cities.
Well, the smart cities are there to make us safe, right? So
oh yeah, with a smart city, I'm sure a fire wouldn't burn through everyone conglomerated into a 15-minute city instead of spread out, with everyone living on top of each other. There haven't been huge fires in our history with like everybody on top of each other. No factories burned with like levels of people stuck in buildings and houses, right? Row houses that literally caught on fire going down the street because they were too close, because it was too compact.
like
No.
I've watched a lot of those I've seen a lot of those micro housing units go up in Boston. And I'll tell you, I would not spend one day in there because I know that if there was ever a fire or an earthquake, they're coming down in less than a half hour.
You have to depend on your neighbor, like actually not burning candles and like blowing them out. You have to depend on somebody who might be drunk, forgetting that they have a cigarette in their mouth. Like, okay, I don't want you that close right there, where if your living room catches on fire, it catches my house. I'm like, no. And that's so irresponsible. And I have no idea why they're pushing for these kind of ideas. It's nutty, I tell you.
Well, they are, and they want bad things, and we're not going to do it. And as far as like my envisioning goes, like I just don't see these cities working out. Like I feel like Americans are way too, yes, there are some entities that will try to like push this thing, but I just feel like we are
too obstinate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think,
independent.
A little bit of chaos, a little bit of elements of life are what you need for stimulation and elements of excitement.
Exactly.
That's funny. Elements of excitement.
Right.
Mrs. Rick Bright.
But it is important, to get things, to get a spark and a thread that you can take and go with. If everything's just cookie cutter, it's mind numbing.
Yeah.
Do you think we could listen to Mufasa signing us out?
I will
Friday?
try. I'm not sure. Yeah, it should play on a Zoom.
Or we had a new one. We could try the
Oh, yeah.
one from last week, the pile drivers. Did any of you see
Oh
that?
yeah, I did like
I
that.
didn't see that.
Oh,
one.
then you might like that because it's pretty great. It's just 1 minute and it's kind of wonderful.
Okay, nice.
We could do
Anything to
Okay,
start off the
we could
weekend.
alternate them.
Yeah,
It'll
anything to
take me a
start
minute
off the
to pull it
weekend
up.
sounds great.
Anything that helps us dance.
Well, the
Move.
thing about this one is it's everybody, it has this wonderful rhythm all together, and they're doing a job that's bigger than any of them. And it's all these really great rhythms, but it's so simple and easy and
Oh,
natural.
nice.
It's just a wonderful, it's the Ospreys, doing what they do. We're pounding away, we're digging away, and we're making a difference. I really do think we are.
Yes.
It's a good symbol.
I think so too.
Oh, that's exciting. I can't wait to see it. It's a great way to start off the weekend for sure.
Yeah. Did you find it? I can resend it to you if you want.
Yeah,
So-
could you?
And we have a lot of generations going through the nests.
Yeah,
And
here it is.
we have to think that we learn a lot as we go. We still have messages from our ancestors. We're still, preparing things for all the generations to come, but we kind of have a certain suspension that we can just kind of like flow with it. And that's where we got to go with it.
That's very important, Tara. That we have to remember who we are and where we came from so that we can transmit it to our kids or our nephews and young people around us. And it's very easy to get lost, to lose sight of that.
Absolutely. I think Carol
Yeah.
put it in the chat, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I put it in the chat. Did you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, don't be afraid to teach. I know none of us are afraid to teach, and I was thinking, and I maybe sent you guys before.
You're right.
We don't know everything, but we know a dang lot.
That's right.
Okay, I've got the video. It's loading now. I've got to get through the commercial first.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. So everybody have a blessed weekend.
Yes.
Make it
Yeah.
happen. Up here, we
Get
would
your
like
vitamin
people
D
to-
while it's still available.
Yeah,
and
because they're cracking down. It's pretty soon it's going to be illegal.
send some hot humid weather up, will you? What the flip?
Are you
Oh,
already
boy,
in the,
I had 105 this week, and then it got down
Whoa.
to 103.
What?
Yeah, we had our little heat wave.
we had I think 89 to 93.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's my stuff.
Oh, they went away.
Here-
Not for a
okay, here we
second.
go. I got to
Okay,
share
good.
sound.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week on Protecting the Nest.
Eek, eek.
Eek, eek.
Eek, eek, eek.
Just 1 minute. Oh, go back to the beginning.
March. Okay, we're out there.
I love that's how they're building and they're just
Yeah,
pushing it into
they're
the
the
mud. That's
pile
amazing.
drivers, the human
Yes, that's-
pile drivers.
That's awesome.
We gotta do a repeat of that at Carbonauts.
Yeah.
Can you guys send me that link? Because I bet I could clean some baseboards and,
Okay, it's
and
right
clean
in
some
the
dishes
chat.
to that.
Yeah,
All right.
I'll put it in the little thing here.
I
Yeah, I'll
just
just
sent
send
it to you by email.
Awesome.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good meeting. You guys.
You too.
Bye.
See you later.
Okay, have a good weekend. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Scott.
Bye.
Okay.
How are we on time? Oh, we still got 15 minutes yet.